Hello everyone. We are here to discuss a very important issue of recent significance. The issue is related to delimitation and also the women reservation bill. We'll discuss both the issues together. As you all know that these two issues have been presented in the legislature in a combined legislation. In this video, we will come to know about what is delimitation, what are the constitutional provisions related to delimitation, and along with it, we will also get to know what are the specific issues that was the reason for debate between the government, the ruling party, and also the opposition and the different state governments. What were the issues related to that? We will also see what the provisions and the historical perspective to women reservation is. We will also discuss what was the provision of the constitutional amendment which was taken up before, and how this attempt was to change a bit of those provisions. Okay, starting with, first of all, what exactly is delimitation? So as we know that the population of a country or any region is not a static concept. The population changes, and that too in a country like India, where we have a demographic dividend which is comparatively young. That is the reason why you will find that in India there is an increasing population or an increasing demographic dividend that is there. Now, this does what? The increasing population is not always proportionate, which means the increasing population that we are talking about, it may differ from region to region. And in order to maintain a parity in representation, which is to ensure that the representation and the percentage of population a particular candidate who is a member of the legislature represents, to ensure a parity between them, we take up the process of delimitation. We redefine the boundaries, and we also increase the number of seats to ensure a parity between population and representation. That is basically what we call as delimitation. Under the Indian Constitution, delimitation is an exercise which has to be conducted after every census. It has to be conducted after every census. However, if you look at the 1970s, from the 1970s, the delimitation was frozen. So we have not conducted delimitation in the scale that we are talking about. That means we are talking about delimitation for the whole of the country, and thereby changing the seats in the Lok Sabha. And we have not conducted that post the 1970s. So the current attempt of the government was to undertake a delimitation in the Lok Sabha, where every state would need to go under that delimitation, resulting into changes in the number of seats in the Lok Sabha, and more importantly, the proportional representation, which means the percentage wise representation that different states and different regions have in the Lok Sabha. Okay, what we are going to do is, first, before taking up our discussion on women reservation, let us first understand the details related to the provisions that were recently introduced. First of all, if you look at the recent package, what exactly was the package about? That means the recent discussion, the debate that was there, it had two very important legislations which were tied up together. The legislation one was related to reserving women reservation, and secondly was related to delimitation. Okay, now the package basically wanted to amend Article 81, Article 82, as well as Article 334A of the Constitution. Article 81 deals with the composition of the Lok Sabha. Article 82 deals with delimitation, and Article 334 of the Constitution deals with reservation. In this case, the women reservation that is there. Now, why is delimitation important? Delimitation is important, as we had discussed earlier in the video when I started this discussion. Delimitation is important because there is a demographic change that is going on. And in order to ensure that this current demographic reality is also represented in the seats or the representation in the Lok Sabha, that is basically the reason why delimitation becomes important. Okay. Now, what were the specific legislative steps that was proposed recently? The legislative steps proposed was first taking up a constitutional amendment under 131st Constitutional Amendment Bill, which was primarily for providing reservation to women, but along with it, it also wanted to amend Article 81 of the Constitution, because as we know, in the last slide we have seen Article 81 deals with the membership and the composition of the Lok Sabha. And as we all know that the last comprehensive delimitation exercise was conducted and was frozen from the 1970s. So the objective was, if you look at the Constitution also says a very important provision. The Constitution mentions that the next delimitation exercise will be conducted after the first census after the year 2026. So it was frozen to the year 2026, and after the year 2026, the first census, which would be conducted in 2031. So the next delimitation was supposed to be conducted after the first census of 2026 and their figures are released, which means once the census of 2031 and the population details is once published, then the delimitation was supposed to be conducted. So this attempt that was made, it was made to amend that provision, in fact remove that provision, and conduct a delimitation which would be conducted after 2026, or you can say from 2026 onwards, and according to the 2011 census. That is not the 2031 data, but according to the 2011 census, the population data, the delimitation would be conducted on the basis of that particular data. Okay. Now, what are the objectives? As we have already seen, the Lok Sabha, the population, currently the delimitation, or you can see the current representation that is there, it is on the basis of the 1971 census. That was the objective was to change that. There was also an objective to provide a reservation, and along with it there was an objective to change the constituencies and take up delimitation to ensure that the current demography and the parity that the representation should have is basically ensured. Okay. Now, if you look at the key provisions that were proposed, it was proposed in this manner that currently the 543 seats that were there in the Lok Sabha, that would be changed, because if you look at the Constitution, it says that a maximum of 550 seats would be allowed in the Lok Sabha, that would be changed, and accordingly a new maximum number of seats would be mentioned in the constitution, which would be 850, out of which 815 seats would belong to the states and 35 of the seats would belong to the union territories. Along with this, there would be an improvement in the representation ratio and the elected representatives, as already told you, that it would be more representative of the current demography. And another very important change would be that the women reservation, which was delayed, now would be they would be taken up post the 2026 delimitation. That means if I give you a bit of details related to women reservation, so you would find that the constitutional amendment which was done in the year 2023 was it specifically included that women reservation will be applicable after the first census after 2026, which means again it would be when the 2031 data was released, there would be delimitation conducted on the basis of it, and then women reservation would be extended. The government wanted to change this, and the government wanted to conduct delimitation, and as soon as the delimitation is conducted, women reservation will be applied. Women reservation would be applied in the current. So they wanted to prepone the process. So they did not wanted to wait for the 2031 data. They wanted to conduct it once the 2026 delimitation exercise is completed. They wanted to take up women reservation there itself. Okay. Now, so along with it, they wanted to amend Article 82 of the Indian Constitution, which restricts the exercise to be first census after 2026. I have already told you. They wanted to proceed the delimitation and provide women reservation on the basis of 2011 data. And this is where the whole problem also lied. Now, before we come to the problems part of it, there was a structural change that would have emerged post this delimitation. What was that? See, first of all, if you look at the constitution says that a delimitation would be conducted post every census, but that was changed and it was frozen to 1971, data of the 1971, and that would be the data which would continue till the first census post 2026. Okay. Now, what also majorly a major change that was proposed was that if you look at the current provision of the constitution, the current provision of the constitution says that if you need to modify or postpone or change any provision related to delimitation, that means if you wanted to maybe freeze delimitation up to a certain number of years, or if you need to conduct delimitation, or if you need to modify it in any such manner, currently the constitution says that there is a two-third majority that would be required. That is, a special majority would be required. This was also which the government wanted to change, and the government wanted to bring about that any modification or a change could be done by a simple majority. Now this was also looked at as a problem because a number of political representatives, primarily belonging to the opposition party, saw this as a potential misuse. Why? Because this would mean that the legislative safeguard, which does not allow delimitation to be easily modified, or the provisions related to it to be easily modified, now it could be done by a simple majority. So that was a major structural shift which was also proposed. Now, what is the Delimitation Commission and the provisions related to it? As we know, the Delimitation Commission, we know what the objective of Delimitation Commission is. We have talked about it earlier in this video. But what is the composition of the Delimitation Commission? So Delimitation Commission composes of a serving or a retired Supreme Court judge who would be the chairman of it. Then there will be the chief election commissioner and the state election commissioners. They would also be the ex officio members. Okay, so a judge, retired or retired judge of the Supreme Court, that individual would chair the body, and along with it, the chief election commissioner and the state election commissioners would be the members. Along with it, the states that was there, it was to have 10 associate members, though they did not have voting rights. 10 associate members, including 5 MPs and 5 MLAs. No, in that 10 associate members, they would be the members of the Delimitation Commission. However, they would not have the voting rights here. And what would be the criterias that would be considered by the commission while taking up delimitation? So they will consider criterias like population, administrative boundaries, geographical features, and other issues of public convenience. They would all be taken into into the consideration while coming up with delimitation. One very important aspect, most of you would be aware about it who have ever read about Delimitation Commission. But if you have not read about it, one very important provision that is related to Delimitation Commission, which is also important for your upcoming prelims examination, is the fact that whenever the Delimitation Commission issues orders, those orders cannot be challenged in any court of law in India, which means Delimitation Commission and its orders are not subject to judicial review. Okay. The provision also talked about reservation, but on rotation basis for seats for women. Now, this is not something which is very new. The reason is that the same provision is also applicable for reservation that is extended to women in local bodies. So whether it is panchayats or municipalities, we know that the constitution provides for 1/3 reservation, a minimum of 1/3 reservation there also. And there also, there is a rotation basis that is followed, which means if seats are reserved, they are not reserved permanently. They are reserved for a temporary period, and then some other seats would be reserved. So on a rotation basis. Okay. Now, one of the most important concerns with the delimitation was the north-south divide. What does this mean? See, the southern states that are there, they have raised concerns related to their population. Why? Because these states have successfully taken up controlled measures or measures to control population, and they have restricted their population growth. They have restricted their population growth. Now, this restriction of population growth will have a negative impact in their representation. Why? Because the other states that are there, primarily the northern states or those states which are being classified as a Hindi heartland states, they have not still been able to achieve this. So what has happened with them is that in these states there has been a population explosion, and which would mean that this would directly show in their representation in the Lok Sabha. This was one of the major issues. And if we go back in these slides and come to a very important slide which has been which I have picked up from one of the newspapers. you can see here that this slide shows that in comparison, you will find that the percentage representation that the southern states have in the current Lok Sabha, when a census is, when the change is done on the basis of 2011 census, there would be an increase in the number of seats, but there would be a decline in percentage representation. As you can see here, that the southern states that are there, currently they have 24.3% representation, but very likely their representation is going to decrease by approximately 4%, 3.5 odd percent. It is going to decrease. Whereas if you look at, the Hindi heartland states, there would be a considerable increase of approximately 5% in their representation. Okay, so the number of seats that every state has would definitely increase, but the percentage representation that they have is going to decrease. And that is the reason why you will find that most of the southern states, they were very critical of this particular provision. Okay, now, so we have seen this north-south divide. What are the major challenges? The major challenges is that this would result into population. No, this would challenge this fairness concept, regional fairness, that are every region being provided with fair representation. There was also an issue related to political manipulation, because there is, whenever a delimitation exercise is conducted, there are always concerns raised on it being politically misused. Then if you look at the current census, which is the 2021 census, because of COVID and other factors that were there, the data of this census and the conduct of this census has been delayed, and therefore there was a reliance on the 2011 data. Now this 2011 data that is there, it is a data which is in contemporary times, it is an old data, because it's been 15 years since the exercise was conducted. So something that something that could also be questioned is, why not wait for the existing data to come? Okay, and then comes women reservation, because the timeline for women reservation is also dependent upon delimitation. Only when the delimitation would be conducted, only then there could be no women reservation that would be extended. Okay, so these were the major challenges that were associated. Significance, as we know, that women reservation would increase participation. Representation of citizens based on after delimitation would be more in it would be more in parity to the current population. So current population and the representation that is there, it is based on outdated data, so that also needs to be changed. Okay, so these were the issues related to delimitation. We understood what is delimitation. We understood what are the constitutional provision related to delimitation as of now. We also understood what was the change that was proposed. We also understood what are the major concerns that are there related to delimitation. However, uh, because of the Lok Sabha voting against the constitutional amendment, so as of now, this is temporarily suspended. Okay, because this is not something which will not be conducted. It will be conducted. It will be conducted later on. Okay, so delimitation is necessary. It should be regularly conducted. But as of now, because the Lok Sabha voted against it, that is, Lok Sabha voted against the women reservation bill, That is the reason why this as of now has been temporarily put to hold. Okay. Now, when we talk about the women reservation issue that is there, so what we have to understand is what is the provisions related to it, what is the historical perspective to it, and what was the proposed contemporary change. So the constitutional amendment was done, okay, in 2023 itself. The constitutional amendment proposed that 33% of the seats in the parliament as well as in the state legislatures would be reserved for women. Okay. And the period that has been, the period for which the reservation would be applicable would be 15 years. But as the constitutional amendment would not, the bill did not, the constitutional amendment did not allow the reservation to be extended immediately. What the law wanted was that women reservation will be extended after, it will be implemented after the first census after 2026. So on the data released on the first census, then on the basis of that, there would be delimitation that would be